The title Haven came to me because the show is about these females finding refuge and rest. In a lot of the paintings, you see women laying on sofas or sprawled on beds or just generally relaxing in the paintings. And so it was really about finding refuge in a world that seems very chaotic around the globe. How do we find rest and how do we find refuge? And for me, that was haven, a safe haven. I build the interior space by finding images and ideas on Pinterest, social media. I also use a lot of vintage magazines, and I'm very sensitive to spaces and environments. So some of them are places that I've seen or been, and I use that as a source material to add the females or the people that I find into these spaces. So it's almost like a dollhouse. I kind of take a female that I find, and then I find an interior space, and then I add a lamp here or add a painting that I like inside of this, into this space. So it's almost like building this subconscious dollhouse. When I was little, I used to take shoe boxes and I would cut out magazines. My grandmother and my mom and aunt would give me magazines, and I would cut these people out of magazines and these houses, these little sofas and beds, and I would spend hours making these little domestic spaces, and they were real. And I'm an only child, so my imagination became even more vivid when I built the space. So in a way, I think I'm doing the same thing, and I find the same joy by creating these spaces. I realized that it's not really these dark interior spaces, but it's actually the mood of darkness that I like. In that nothingness, and that nothingness is so beautiful. It allows you to actually completely let go. So I feel like these dark interiors are kind of, in a way, subconsciously my way of saying that in this bleak darkness, we can find like refuge. Like people are sensitive to light, you know, we like low, moody lights. So I think that that's where the paintings and where I'm inspired by colors and light, and why I use like these kind of like blues or greens in this dark space to kind of show like this kind of shimmer of like familiarity, you know? I began my my academic study as a photographer. I've trained as a photographer in undergrad and grad studies. I still think like a photographer because a photographer thinks about framing and seeing and using the moment to kind of create this atmosphere. And it's all about a singular subject, or they call the punctum. I also use a black canvas, so I feel like that's almost remnants of the darkroom. I allow these subjects to come out of this black abyss. And just almost like when you're developing and you have it and you're rocking it and you're moving it and you bring this subject to life, it's the same feeling for me. And it's the same feeling for me as when I go and photograph. I would find a great image or a great subject on the street, and I would have this moment of like, oh my God, there it is, yeah? And I have the same feeling when a painting comes. So I feel like I never abandoned my craft. There's, I would say, 4 elements. It's the lighting, the nails, and the cigarette, and the expression of the woman in the painting is the punctum. But it's, you know, for me, I never know because I talk to different people, and the punctum is so many different things. Sometimes it's the lamp, or it's the rug, or it's the red blush on her cheek. You know, it's what triggers different people, just like a photograph or a moment. We're alike in so many ways, but what we're sensitive to is so different, you know? The paintings for me are deeply inspired by the movie Rear Window with Alfred Hitchcock. The idea of the voyeuristic looking on the subject becomes actually even more of a moment because someone is watching. So for me, I feel like the intimacy is almost even heightened because the subject doesn't move, she doesn't get off her sofa, she doesn't change her expression, she's still napping, but you have endless time to watch her without being seen. And for me, that's the mystery. That's where I feel like that's the magic that happens, because I think we all do it. You know, I find myself doing it. I enjoy to watch. So I feel like that's a collaborative partnership that I share with the viewer, that I'm making it for them, but also too that it's this really special moment that a viewer and a subject is sharing. I reference a lot of Matisse in my work because Matisse for me is someone that I'm not trained as a painter, yeah? So Matisse always says like, don't paint what you see, paint what you feel. And so when I get stuck and I'm looking at like Manet or a great artist like, Zorn or anyone, I'm like, paint Joy, the female, what she feels, not her anatomy perfect. So I pay homage in a way. The meta is the homage for me. But for example, for the unicorn, it's symbolic because the unicorn, from what the folklore and what what has been said about the tapestry is that the unicorn can leave, right? But she finds refuge, or he or she finds refuge in this cage, yeah? So that's almost like these women. They find rest, even though they can leave the house, they choose to be here, sleep. Just like we all find refuge in a home, we can leave, but we choose to stay, So it's this idea of this cage, but come out. What do you see? What do you believe? And, and what we can kind of impose on these actual historical pieces that are kind of curious to me. I really enjoy sourcing them in the work. The title Secret Songbird was inspired actually by my mother. We were on the phone and I was finishing up the show and she said, you have to add a animal. And I said, okay. And so we were on the phone and we talk a lot about life and symbology and what it means and the spiritual side of life and how things show up. And for me, things show up to me are messages or omens I feel are red cardinals. And my mom said, she was asking me and she said, we were on the phone and she said, oh my God, I just saw a red cardinal. And I said, oh, wow. And she said, you got to add a red cardinal to a painting. And so I was already painting this woman on the floor. And of course, she was going to be smoking or just relaxing and just doing her thing. And I said, she needs a cardinal. And the more I left her and I would come back to her, I realized that red cardinal was actually singing to her, that they looked like they were in an embrace of a moment. So I titled it The Secret because it was my mom's secret and I'm telling you, and that the idea of this cardinal was a songbird singing to her. So that's how the title came to be. The works on paper for me are a way to really get out of the contextual, conceptual, grid, color, mood, female, relaxing, cigarette smoking world and allow myself to make dots of water and just allow the imagination and creativity of the eye and the hand to play again. And I'm deeply inspired by the work of Marlene Dumas and the expressions of the faces and the colors. I have to find as an artist a way to play. So the watercolors allow me to still make the figure, but leave her in this minimal space and allow this playful energy to become. So I've allowed myself to really let the figure be not so perfect. As with painting, I want her to be perfect on her sofa. And in the watercolors, I allow her to be these beautiful mistakes.